When it comes to big franchises, retcons are often met with derision, and for very good reason. In most cases, they completely undermine all the stuff we know and love about a character or a plot element. With that said, retcons are not inherently bad. Sometimes you have a character that just didn't quite stick the landing and they need to be reworked. Sometimes you have a plot element that needs to be better implemented. So, we're going to be ranking these by how well the actual retcon itself was done and how big the improvement was. Yeah, pretty simple rules. Let's get into it. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that the Five Nights at Freddy's lore has become as hard to follow as Trails or Kingdom Hearts. There's a reason this franchise drove MatPat insane, while also simultaneously making him rich. We're gonna miss you, you crazy nerd. To kick off our list, I'm gonna be taking you back to the days of FNAF 4, back when everyone thought that was the end of the franchise after they all thought FNAF 3 was the end of the franchise. Looks like someone's been copying Friday the 13th's homework. After FNAF 4 was released in late 2015 and people inevitably started theorizing about it, game developer Scott Cawthon updated his website with 3 separate cryptic messages, chief among them being, in the FNAF 4 minigame, why would the tiny toy Chica be missing her beak? This led to everyone looking back through the game to see if they missed anything, and because this is FNAF, they absolutely did. There were Easter eggs throughout the FNAF 4 minigames referring back to FNAF 2, like the boy carrying a balloon, the toy in the sister's room resembling Mangle, and the aforementioned toy Chica missing her beak. There were also Easter eggs during the night suggesting that your bedroom wasn't actually your bedroom, but rather a hospital bed. Then there are your stuffed animals, which all look like the FNAF 1 animatronics, and a yellow bunny on the stage that kind of looks like Springtrap, and wait, what is Scott suggesting?
It was a dream!
And thus, the Dream Theory was born. Like its namesake, this theory suggested that everything we experienced in FNAFs 1, 2, and 3 was all a string of childhood nightmares dreamt by the crying child. These nightmares are likely deathbed hallucinations, as suggested by the nightstand Easter eggs and that infamous end-of-game bite.
Was that the bite?
Alright, I get it!
Once Scott basically implied that this theory was fact, the internet was not happy. Wow, I'm almost as shocked as absolutely no one. The internet being unhappy with something. So once again, Scott Cawthon does what he does and listens to criticism to make this right by expanding the franchise once again. FNAF Sister Location would basically confirm that FNAFs 1 through 3 did indeed happen, while also formally introducing us to the Aftons. But what about FNAF 4? Well, if you manage to make your way to the private room at the end of Night 5 and enter the code 1983 into the keypad in front of you, the security monitors will reveal the house of the crying child. This suggests that someone, most likely family patriarch William Afton, had set up cameras to watch him. Or so it seems. An Easter egg in the Midnight Motorist minigame inside Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator shows us a man who goes to visit the gravesite of his dead kid. He gets home to find a broken window in his son's bedroom and footsteps that presumably lead towards that same gravesite. So while we play as the crying child in the FNAF 4 minigames, we actually play as the older brother, Michael Afton, in the nights themselves. We kept leaving the house to check the gravesite, believing that our little brother had come back to haunt him. Hence, my dear old dad set up cameras in our room and induced PTSD hallucinations to keep us from leaving again.
Don't you think that might have been a little harsh?
At this point, most fans have completely forgotten about the Dream Theory, save for an Easter egg in the FNAF movie. The only reason this retcon isn't any higher is that you can really only draw these conclusions through Easter eggs and analysis rather than direct spelled out plot points. But Scott clearly showed how much he pays attention to the fans by not leaving the franchise out on a cop-out. And yes, after all that, we still have 9 entries left, and I can see all who attempt to click away. In terms of generation remakes of the Pokemon games, it's been unanimously agreed on 2 things. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are so freaking dull, while HeartGold and SoulSilver helped to raise the bar. Gen 2 was great enough as it was, but the remakes breathes new life into the game with plenty of new features to keep it fresh, yet familiar. Adding to it, it gave us a resolution to a mystery I didn't even know we wanted, or even had. Just to set the scene in the original Gen 1 games, following his defeat, Giovanni, the head honcho for Team Rocket and the Viridian gym leader, announces that he's disbanding his criminal empire. After that, nothing. Some Team Rocket goons and Johto try to get in contact with him, which led to the big Goldenrod Tower takeover, but still nothing. He's completely vanished.
Goodbye, everyone. I'll remember you all in therapy.
And basically pulling the plug on Team Rocket was his quote-unquote redemption arc. Kind of a letdown for the big bad mafia boss. Until the remakes, that is. Fast forward to HeartGold and SoulSilver, where we encounter Celebi, who takes us on a time-traveling escapade, landing us 3 years ago. There we find our rival, Silver, talking to what looks like his dad. Shady-looking fellow talking about his goals to revive Team Rocket? Wait a minute.
He's your son?
I have a son?
Surprise! Turns out after getting his fancy suited butt handed to him in Kanto, Giovanni hid away in Johto for the past 3 years. And he's the father of our rival Silver. Oh, and then Celebi does another wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey and takes us to Giovanni's secret hideout on the day that we took out Team Rocket at Goldenrod Tower. This confirms not only did our Pokemon Godfather get his minion's message, but he's been using his away time to train himself back up, fully determined to restart the organization. Of course, we wipe the floor with him all over again and send him running, meaning that we basically saved ourselves from another uprising.
Time travel is frustrating.
The ever-pesky nitpicker in me wonders if we really needed to know where Giovanni went after Red beat him. It's just kind of expected that the Big Bang gangliers just kind of sawed off when their number comes up. The rest of me loves what they did in the remake. It filled in the blanks of why Team Rocket's cry for help didn't work out, and having him actually bide his time to scheme for a massive comeback feels more on brand with him. Oh, and him and Silver. Really nice touch, and adds an extra layer of depth to the kid's deep hatred for the criminal organization, while his own hands ain't exactly clean. I think up to this point, it was only confirmed in the manga, though it was hinted in Fire Red and Leaf Green that Giovanni had a son. Apparently, this dysfunctional family relationship just stuck after this, since in Pokemon Masters, Silver still holds a grudge towards his father and blames himself for his actions, thinking it's up to him and him alone to defeat Giovanni. So was it a needed addition? Probably not, but still, definitely a much welcomed one for bringing depth to 2 criminal souls whose bond ran deeper than we initially thought. The only way this could have been better is if Silver came with you so he could confront his dad too. Ari still gets hopping mad they missed out on that opportunity. It's kind of cute. As far as Sony's old flagship franchises go, Jak and Daxter is probably the one that's gone through the most changes. While it started out as a 3D platformer collectathon fresh off the N64 days, the second and third games took that premise and threw it into the future. Literally. With the start of the second game, time travel sends the duo into a grittier future and turns Jak from a plucky, wide-eyed, silent protagonist into an edgy, smart-mouthed adult who can now talk and whose first on-screen words are a vow to murder the villain in cold blood. So yeah, it's a bit, different. But hey, Jak 2 and 3 managed to stick the landing while keeping the series' origin in mind, expanding on the lore and nature of Eco in all its forms. But Jak 2 still left one of the original's biggest mysteries up in the air. Just who were the precursors? The first game establishes them as these ancient, super mysterious beings that shaped the world, so old that even the rocks of the earth are infants in comparison, and just simply disappeared. All that remained of them were ancient artifacts and relics of their civilization, including these weirdly shaped statues that look kind of like an alien mosquito. As far as the series was concerned, these statues were made in the image of the precursors, and there was no reason to doubt that they looked like this. And then came Jak 3, and with it, more mystery about the precursors. You see giant statues that teach Jak the ways of harnessing light eco, and eventually, they take a liking to Jak, offering the chance to evolve into a precursor. And well, there he is, big ethereal ghost guy. That's what they look like, right? Well, the celebration is cut short when one of the game's main antagonists jumps Jak, robbing him of the chance to ascend to godhood. Oh, what was his name again? Count, no, that's not it. Yes, Count Vegan.
It's Vega!
Oh my god, I don't fucking care.
So Vigor gets to become a precursor. That ain't good. So we're gonna have a climactic boss fight against him, right? Well, in any other game, we would. But here, something else happens.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this entire time, the reality warping ancient godlike civilization were Otzels. That is absolutely hilarious. Now, this retcon isn't here because it fixed anything bad about precursor lore or connected some dots that weren't there before. It's just funny. What's better, it means that when Daxter was cursed to be a weasel from exposure to dark eco in the first place, it turns out he was actually just blessed into that form. And now Vigor gets to partake in that blessing. Wait, why is Cleaver in Jak X Combat Racing, but Otzel Vigor isn't?
I'd say that yappy rodent of yours is a bit bony, but skinned and buttered, he'd make a nice treat.
Wow, my mind goes to dark places. And we wouldn't have that without this twist. The Precursors pulling a Wizard of Oz is a glorious Pandora's box that turns the entire series' pre-established lore on its head in the form of what's basically a practical joke on every character who ever mystified themselves studying them. Comedy at its finest, people. Comedy at its finest. There's one game that has probably been retconned more than any other. A game with so many retcons and rewritings of the lore that it's practically a ship of Theseus. That game? League of Legends. Now, the problem with League having so many retcons is, well, you're gonna have some winners and some losers. For example, the vast majority of players think the rework of Warwick was a smashing success. But one of my writers insists that Ari's original lore was the best and that Aatrox's rework ruined him entirely. So a lot of this is down to personal taste. And that's why League is so low on the list. There are some high highs and some low lows. Some retcons leave the fanbase completely divided. Some people miss the old Institute of War. Others think it's good that it's gone. Me? My favorite retcon is Soraka's character. To be honest, originally she was kinda, well, a bitch.
Do you always fight so poorly?
When the retcon made her the saintly healer we all know and love today, well, there's a reason she was on my top female crushes list. Shameless plug. With retcons being so common in League, it's only a matter of time before the next major shakeup happens in the world of Runeterra. Will it be a major success or a complete bomb? Only time will tell. But it might help if the lore team weren't so obsessed with the Star Guardian storyline. Seriously, they're just Sailor Moon ripoffs. Why does the lore team write so much for them so often? Oh, right. Money. Having gone on for nearly 3 decades, the King of Fighters has amassed an absolute cavalcade of characters. Among them, none are more infamous than K49. Upon his introduction, K49 quickly found himself as quite a controversial character. Why? Well, we don't 100% know. Could be the story, as he was a total jerk with no charisma or redeeming qualities. More importantly, he was an Akira ripoff so blatant that his design was literally just a palette swap. Amazing how many of those we keep finding. But what made this more mysterious was what SNK did with him. Oh, they did something far more devious than simply killing him off. They erased him. After the non-canon King of Fighters 2002, K49 never made another playable appearance in the series. But that didn't stop there. In 2002 Unlimited Match, he was replaced by a completely new character with the exact same backstory. Said character also took his place when All-Star adapted the Nest saga. It was even edited out of the gallery in 14. When asked about all of this, staff members at SNK straight up denied he ever existed. And for a time, that was the end of it. But then something interesting happened. A new character, Krohnen, was introduced for King of Fighters 15, and he has some of the same moves as K49 and a vaguely similar design, but there's no way it's actually him. Besides, SNK would never...
Well now, what do we have here?
Yep, K49 was alive the whole time. There's even an in-story explanation given for where he was. He changed his appearance and identity to throw nests off his tail. Alongside the genuinely funny comeback, SNK also toned down the aspects that made him unappealing. He's slightly less of a jerk, and the Akira references aren't nearly as lawsuit-worthy. And this is currently the prevailing theory as to why all of this happened. They were afraid of Toho, and after SNK went bankrupt in '99, their new sponsors wanted to wipe away any potential losses. Now that I think about it, why wasn't K49's original debut in King of Fighters '99? Would have been way more fitting. What is it with now iconic fighting game franchises starting out so awkwardly? Seriously, when's the last time you ever thought about Street Fighter 1? Among many examples, there's the original BlazBlue. While the actual fighting itself was solid, the story was kind of a mess. And the biggest problem was its main protagonist, Ragna the Blood Edge. So, on paper, Ragna is your classic anti-hero. He's out to destroy the tyrannical government while being a jerk about it. But unlike actual good anti-heroes who have likable and interesting qualities, Ragna has no such thing. He's willing to casually murder people for the crime of just being employed by the NOL.
Shot through the head by some hero fighting the rich one lonely secretary at a time.
His actual character wasn't very interesting either, just giving us the bare minimum of backstory with no real growth or development. And yes, you're meant to see him as sympathetic. Why else would the game make such a big deal out of him getting saved in the true ending? Beginning in Continuum Shift, we got a far different Ragna. Similar to how another edgy, white-haired, red-coated swordsman became more fun once the story stopped taking him so dang seriously, Ragna's personality did a complete 180, going from an unlikable, edgy anti-hero to more of a lighthearted parody of one. He now serves as the straight man to all the various bizarre and eccentric characters that make up the cast. As for the whole mass murder thing, retconned as being in-universe propaganda.
You heard it here first.
Ragna the Blood Edge.
Killing women and children.
Somewhere. I don't know where BlazBlue takes place. I'm just the editor.
All this sets the stage for Ragna to grow and become a far more interesting character. I make a 2 nickels joke about this one being similar to Raiden from Mortal Kombat, but I've been making too many of those lately. For this entry, we gotta go back to the past. Samurai Jack. Hey, opportunity knocked and I took it. Oh man, Samurai Jack, another cult classic from Cartoon Network's golden age. I admit that I didn't really watch this show all that much when it first came out, but I respect the heck out of it for its simple, dramatic storytelling and stylized art direction. And of course, I checked out the Adult Swim revival, which aimed to finally finish the original series narrative. This brought with it a cathartic end to the samurai's journey, and also one of the most divisive and heartbreaking series finales. Fans, took it well.
I don't want her, bitch! I want her! And you murdered her!
Why do I bring this up? Well, imagine if you will that some fan actually went full Annie Wilkes, and to keep their legs, someone at Adult Swim decided to try a second chance scenario in video game form, and thus, Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. Taking place in the middle of the finale, Jack gets pulled into a time pocket and must fight through several iconic locations to find Ashi and finally put an end to Aku's reign. The game itself is pretty fun, especially if you're a fan of the show. Series creator Tartakovsky gave his stamp of approval on it and even had the head writer for Season 5 handle the story. But where does the retcon actually come in? Well, it's a bit of a scavenger hunt, this one. But throughout the game, there are 50 of these corrupted caimans hidden that Jack needs to collect. If you collect all 50 of them before facing Aku for the final time, you unlock a secret ending. One where Ashi isn't wiped out of existence and Jack gets the happily ever after he struggled to reach for Lord knows how frickin' long. And yes, this can be considered the actual canon ending to the show. Unlike other Samurai Jack games, Adult Swim wanted to feel like it was written for the show in a way that flowed naturally. Tartakovsky admits he's not the biggest gamer guy, but the fact that he willingly took the time to help this work makes it feel less like a cash grab and more like a genuine effort to make the fans happy. So where do I stand with this shift in the story? I'll admit I was okay with the original ending, but one part of it still bugged the heck out of me. Okay, so Ashi and Jack knew that killing Aku was going to erase Ashi. Textbook heroic sacrifice. However, I didn't think it was very fair for Ashi and Jack to kill Aku, then have nothing happen for a long time to the point where they think that everything's gonna be okay, they get married, and then she gets erased. Like, what the hell, timeline?
First time.
Wouldn't it have made more sense to have it happen the minute Aku bit it, rather than just casually waiting until Jack was at his most emotionally vulnerable on what's supposed to be the happiest day of their lives? That's just being needlessly cruel. The Pokemon Explorers games got it right. At least they gotta say goodbye. Whatever. I could sit here debating about causality until I'm blue in the face, but I'm not gonna pretend that Jack getting his happy ending didn't warm my heart. Plus, it was clearly handled with care, so why bite the hand that feeds us? Now, if only Cartoon Network could share the same amount of care to its other IPs. Stop teasing us about Teen Titans Resolution and actually do it, you pricks! Fire Emblem and retcons don't usually go hand in hand. Some of the most well-known changes made to a pre-established story don't always fly well with fans. Examples: Veld being responsible for killing Leaf's parents, invalidating Travant's efforts, or Arvis having an illegitimate child, making him seem even more like an unreliable dickhead, or Micaiah chewing out half of Telios' world building, and Chris.
Who the fuck are you?
That being said, Shadows of Valentia is generally well liked in terms of what it brought to the story of Gaiden. The original Fire Emblem 2 had a pretty good one for its time, but it's obviously limited. Some plot lines like the Deliverance and Alms Rhymes to Regalian Royalty were not all that fleshed out by then. Hence, the remake gave it a much needed update with the introduction of two new antagonists, Fernand and Berkut. Fernand was a member of the Deliverance who remained firmly on Clive's side as his best friend. That is, until he lost his family and blamed the commoners for their recklessness. He developed a classist attitude that seeps into an internal conflict within the Deliverance. When Clive chose to elect Alm as their leader to uproot segregation in Valentia, Fernand didn't take it too well and left the group. He would rather betray his country and side with Berkut than vouch for anyone who isn't a noble. What an asshole. Despite that, his actions did raise some doubts for Clive, making him question the legitimacy of his strategy to elect someone who lacks the experience of a noble as a leader. It encourages Alm to go a bit further into proving to everyone that the faith they placed in him is well spent. And as for Berkut, he's the pride of Regal, a proud successor to Emperor Rudolph that uses his talent and authority to fight his enemies for sport. He's super hammy, and boy, did he make the story fun. He even has his own internal conflict, shouldering the expectations of a nation ruled by strength. When Rudolph reveals the truth about Alm being his son, both Berkut and Alm struggle on opposite sides to accept the new fates presented to them. It puts Alm in a dilemma where he relates with Berkut's situation and wants to save him, but tragically doesn't get the chance as Berkut loses himself to the power Duma gave him. Man, that is so much more interesting than the bare bones bits of the original. Now, granted, these characters aren't perfect. Fernand doesn't show enough redeemable qualities, and Berkut can get a bit too melodramatic. But, the amount of rich character development that's offered to go along with the pre-established characters is just undeniably good. Let's be real here. I don't think anyone's gonna look back at Ong, Clive, and Rudolph in the original Gaiden when this remake has a much more interesting version of the three. And a lot of their newfound depth is thanks to the addition of these two villains.
I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy it.
So it's about time for that JRPG twist. You know, the one where you spend an entire game hearing about this legendary figure within the game's world, eventually find out he's the main villain, and beat him. Then, in the next game, you find out that the guy was just misunderstood and was actually an evil half of another character entirely. Yep, we're talking about that retcon, the legendary one shown at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Haha, gotcha, didn't I? Okay, to be fair, the retcon in Xenoblade 2 isn't exactly like the Xehanort twist in Kingdom Hearts 2, but it definitely does that whole scenario better. So in Xenoblade 1, we hear about Zanza, who eventually becomes the main villain of the whole game. See God Bosses for his whole shtick. Turns out that Zanza was the reincarnated version of this scientist named Klaus, who created the Xenoblade universe just because he was curious about what their science MacGuffin could do. What a joke, right? Well, we learn a different story in Xenoblade 2 that actually makes Klaus slightly more sympathetic. Instead of creating the universe out of sheer curiosity, he did it to right the wrongs of humanity who completely ravaged the Earth due to their own selfish wants. He believed that the conduit, the science MacGuffin that could open paths to other dimensions, could be used as a gateway to lead humanity to become so much more. Yeah, it's a 2001 Space Odyssey story thread. So Klaus was successful in creating two worlds, but in the process split himself in half. His hatred of humanity and belief that they should be expunged became Zanza, while his drive to create something new and wanting to right the wrongs of his species became the Architect in Xenoblade 2. This retcon still paints Klaus as an extremist who wished to create a new world, but in a light that makes it more, well, not reasonable, but more believable? Nah, we'll stick with sympathetic for how much that applies. It's a twist that still keeps the canon of the first game without deteriorating any character from Zanza himself, and it allows for a new canon that can be used to expand the series even more, like in Xenoblade 3. Honestly, it is a contender for number 1, if number 1 didn't fix an entire franchise. Twisted Metal. This franchise literally retcons itself every game, and literally no one cares. Shadow's death. As clumsily as it's been handled, fans clearly really wanted Shadow to come back. For a reason.
Oh my god, he's so goddamn cool!
Bendy and the Ink Machine. Updates retconned the first 3 chapters and made it better. Symphony of the Night. Alucard is now a Dhampir, and both he and Dracula have better motivations for what they do. So, Devil May Cry is number 1 again, huh? Can't avoid it at this point. Dang, Capcom, you really have been killing it, huh? You guys are making real bank between the Resident Evil remake, Street Fighter 6, and of course, Monster Hunter. You're in it to win it. Ignoring your recent anti-mod stances at least. Yeah, Capcom might be making killer games at the moment, but there was a time where they were super stingy about how their games performed. And yeah, I'm talking about Devil May Cry 4. Like, okay, how the heck do you call a game that has 2.3 million copies a failure? In 2008. It's not like your Sony spent 10 times that many dollars making your games. This was before AAA flooded the market. Well, in fairness, Capcom thought the older games sold better and wanted to capitalize on that. So they asked developer Ninja Theory to make a completely new DMC experience. And it did work. DMC Devil May Cry sold 3 million copies and got favorable reviews for its gameplay. Too bad DMC fans really hated Dante's new design and edgy character that makes CW high school shows look like Nickelodeon comparison.
I don't know my mother, but if you're calling me a son of a wouldn't be the first.
I didn't like any of that.
Most of these numbers came from the Western fanbase, which was Ninja Theory's goal. But Capcom tends to be a bit traditional, and so they got to work on Devil May Cry 5, their soon-to-be DMC opus. But Josh, I hear you asking me, what is the retcon in all of this? Well, besides the fact they canned the sequel for their new shiny reboot. So when DMC 5 came out, they also retconned the official DMC timeline. Don't worry, it's nowhere near as bad as Zelda's. They had DMC 2 happening before DMC 4 instead of after, like it was originally. This may seem like nothing, but it does fix a couple of things, like why Dante was such a buzzkill in DMC 2. He was still upset over accidentally killing Virgil the game prior. The real point here is that Devil May Cry 5 fixed a lot of things that people have been wanting for years. It made Nero more likable. It gave a satisfying conclusion to Dante and Virgil's rivalry, and it gave the series the real paint job that both Capcom and the fans have been wanting since Devil May Cry 3. Devil May Cry 5 went to sell on 7.4 million copies, making it Capcom's 10th best-selling game and only being beaten by Resident Evil and Monster Hunter. And this month would mark the 5th year anniversary of the game's release. I really hope Capcom comes back to the series again, because it would be such cap if they didn't.
What the hell are you? No! No! No!
I'm the Fiery Joker, and hopefully this countdown made you think of your favorite retcons in media. Never mind how you guys want me to retcon some of my opinions, but we'll agree to disagree.
Cut!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Check out my other channels such as Joshua Burner for reactions and other stuff, Dragon Fighter Gaming for tabletop, and Bob Equestria for cartoons. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member. Thanks for watching.